Hey you guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. And we got to talk about it. We have to do more videos on this. I know I'm getting behind on my content as of late. For those unaware, Heritage Auctions sent out an excellent press release via email that pretty much states that Heritage Auctions recorded $1.4 billion in sales in the year 2021, making it the first time in its 45-year history that the Dallas-based auction house has surpassed the $1 billion mark. Now, to be fair, I am a client of Heritage Auctions. Personally, from a client perspective, as both a buyer and a seller, I have consigned things to them before. I have no complaints. So I wish them the best with their continued success from that standpoint. I do know some of you, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there about auction companies, about grading companies, and the like. I myself talk an awful lot in this channel about market manipulation, but just talking about the basics, just from a basic client perspective. I have nothing against Heritage Auctions. I'm glad that they have moved over $1.4 billion of sales in the year 2021. This really shows that the entire antiques and collectibles trade is in a massive bull market as we are entering the year 2022. So it's going to be a very exciting year. For the record, I am filming this video towards the end of January 2022. So we're already almost a full month into the new year, and it still shows no signs of slowing down. So a lot of you guys that really want the antiques and collectibles trade to be a thing, you want this thing to keep going strong, to keep moving at this momentum, you're getting your wish. Does that mean it's a great investment? Well, depends on where you are parking your money, what you are buying, what you are attempting to do over the short term or over the long term. Now, believe it or not, even though we are seeing all these gains in the antiques and collectibles trade, that is not what this video is about. What this video is about is something very interesting caught my eye during this particular email blast from Heritage Auctions, because the title of the email is Heritage Auctions Record Year. $181 million in comics and comic art. So if you are on their mailing list and you got this same email, if you scroll down, there is a highlighted section which states comic books and comic art, which made an astonishing leap forward in 2021. This year, the category saw sales reach over $181 million, a 117% leap over last year's sales figures to firmly establish Heritage Auctions as the world's leading auctioneer of comics and original comic art. Now, I'm not paying attention to Heritage propaganda in that. I understand that Heritage does very well in the comic sphere. What I want to focus on, though, guys, is how quickly and how exponentially the value of vintage comic books has shot up just in the last few years. This is truly historic. If this continues, vintage comic books are going to almost have a market cap close to rare coins. And that is something that I never honestly thought would be possible. If this trend continues, literally over the next 2 years, literally vintage comic books are going to have a similar market cap to rare coins. Now, to be fair, when you look at the rare coin marketplace, there are certain coins that have sold for $10, $15, $20 million a piece. We are not at that level yet with comic books, meaning there are a lot of comic books out there that are getting close, if not a little bit higher than the $5 million mark, but we're not at $10 million, $15, $20 million for those specimens. So a lot of people want me to comment on this. I'm going to give you the good news. The good news is, if you're a pop culture collector and you've been investing or buying comic books over the last few years and you've been buying the right pieces, as of right now, at least the value on paper of your collection has increased exponentially. And I'm sitting there right with you guys. I still have a lot of my vintage key issue comic books that I've never sold. Some of them I probably should have sold, but I am holding some of them because I am also emotionally attached to this particular art form, to this particular type of collectible. That said, where this becomes a double-edged sword, you have to understand that with us seeing these high level of prices right now in the year 2022, we don't know if this trend is going to continue. Can this upward movement sustain itself to the point where it continues to be a growing force over the next 5 to 10 years? Or is it going to eventually cool off? Or is it going to be where we see this big run up in prices, then they start to fall exponentially? That could happen as well. So the point of this video is I just want to make you aware that right now we have a pop culture collectible that is really breaking out to the point where if this market continues to go in the same trajectory that it's going just over the next couple of years, it's going to have a massive market cap that is going to potentially affect and alter the overall antiques and collectibles trade going forward, number one. And number two, if this trend would last another 2 decades, meaning we get to 2040 and this thing is still going strong, you now have the potential for a pop culture collectible to become a mainstay antique. And that is something that we are not used to seeing, where you have a market that is really booming, that is still came out of pop culture and is now considered an antique. That is something that usually does not happen in the overall antiques and collectibles trade. So if this market continues to go strong and is able to pick up key headwinds, you're going to have a market that is almost going to be almost at a level where rare coins are at. And that is something I never thought would be possible for a pop culture collectible. Now, to be fair to a lot of the people that agree with most of my commentary on this channel, yes, I am over-exaggerating there because we have a long way to go to get to that point. We still have to pretty much go through another 20 years because if you guys wonder why 20 years is so important, Action Comics 1, Detective Comics 27, they came out of the late 1930s. So in order for those books to be considered true antiques, we have to get to 2039 and those books still being sought after and still increasing exponentially on the market. That would say something as to the trajectory of comic books over the long term. Now that I'm 7 minutes into this video and all my pop culture collectors and enthusiasts that watch these videos are smiling ear to ear, I have to give you some bad news. In most cases, that is going to be a very hard thing for comic books to pull off, simply because when you look at the demographics, younger collectors who identify with a lot of the Marvel superheroes, with a lot of the DC superheroes, they're not flocking to buy vintage comic books. Pretty much it was my generation and the generation above me. And if you guys don't know what generation I'm in the Generation X. Generation X and baby boomers are really what made comic book collecting a thing. That has to continue going forward with enough interest from the younger generations for that to continue and for that to occur. So you are looking at really an interesting development here where some of you guys have been reaching out, Sean, should I sell my vintage comic book collection? And my question or my answer to that question is if you are at a point in time where you think you're going to be better off putting that money elsewhere, either in traditional assets, real estate, maybe more stable long-term assets, then yes, you should. If, however, you want to take a wait and see attitude, I do understand based on these developments. But I will tell you, we are looking at prices that are at all-time highs right now. I mean, go look up, I've said this before, look up some of these books. Look up even Tomb of Dracula 1 in CGC 9.4. Look up Werewolf by Night 32. Look up Tomb of Dracula 10. Look up Incredible Hulk 180. Look up Incredible Hulk 181. Look at Giant Size X-Men. Look at Amazing Spider-Man 300. Look at Amazing Spider-Man 129. The question is, if you only paid several hundred or several thousands of dollars for these books, and now some of them are sitting at the 5-figure or higher mark, do you want to take the risk and keep holding them? And this is where it gets very complicated because a lot of younger collectors that may want to own those books, they're not going to have the money to be able to play in this market anymore. This market is getting right up there with higher end rare coins, with certain luxury collectibles, certain items that just the average person can no longer afford by working a regular job, by earning a menial wage. These markets are pretty much geared towards a lot of successful individuals, people that have the means, people that have the money. And at the end of the day, it's kind of sad because they're based on pop culture characters. There's a lot of people out there that just like Spider-Man, or they just like Batman, or they just like Incredible Hulk. And they want to own something that represents their emotional attachment to that character. And that's where part of me, as much as I'm educated in finance, as much as I understand how these markets work, I get why there's frustration amongst a lot of people that go, I just want to own an Incredible Hulk 181 in near mint condition. And now to do it, I pretty much have to take out a second mortgage on my house. It is getting insane where we are in this market. But what I can tell you with, I don't know where it's going to go. It could go one of two ways. But I'm telling you right now, if you are a comic book collector, you should be smiling ear to ear, especially if you have been investing in these books over the past 10 years. Because if you bought right, if you bought most of the prime key vintage items or books, you've done very well, at least on paper. So the choice is yours. Do you want to sell into the market at an all-time high? Or do you want to hold it and see if it goes even higher? That's something that even it's hard to give advice on because I have an emotional attachment to some of these items as well, guys. More on that in an upcoming video. Thanks for watching.